Good afternoon. God bless you. I'm Pastor Ronna May, and Jerry Palladino is here with me with Beyond Compare Ministries, and we'd like to welcome you to God at Work, this week's edition. And I'm going to be talking about the 2010 earthquake that happened. It's its 11th anniversary this past week of the 2010 earthquake, 8.8 magnitude in Chile. And I just happened to be there 2 days after the quake. It was quite an interesting time, but I learned a lot of lessons, and I know that as painful as it was for so many people, a lot of lives were touched in that time. People were open and receptive to what God had for them because they knew the disaster was so great. There had to be somebody supernatural that could help them. So I'd like to welcome you to be here with us, and let's just ask God's hand to be upon this time. Father, I thank you that you are leading and guiding, Lord, and I ask that this message will speak to people's hearts. Open hearts, heal hearts, Lord, in your precious name, because we know that you are a great God. And the song that Jerry's going to do right now is called, How Great is Our God.
The splendor of a king, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, let all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide, and trembles at his voice, and trembles at his voice. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? All will see how great is our God. And age to age he stands, and time is in his hands, beginning and the end, beginning and the end. The Godhead, three in one, the Father, Spirit, and Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? All will see how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? And all will see how great is our God. Name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. Oh, name above all names, worthy of all praise. My heart will sing, how great is our God. How great is our God? Sing with me, how great is our God? all will see how great is our God. Ooh, how great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. All will see how great is our God.
How great is our God. How great He is. And believe me, I saw that greatness in such a dynamic way at this time down in Chile. I had been previously booked to speak at a conference in a town that was, a little on the outskirts of where the main destruction was. I thought it was going to be pretty safe there, a place called Temuco. And my flight was actually booked way ahead of the earthquake, and for 2 days, 2.5 days after the actual earthquake hit, 8.8 magnitude. We hear all this noise going on about earthquakes that are 6 point something and how huge and devastating they are. Well, this one here was 8.8. Hundreds of lives were lost. Anyway, so I was booked to speak in Temuco, and when the earthquake hit, I thought, well, I guess there goes that trip. And then heard that the main airport in Santiago, which had been closed because of damage, was going to be opening up 2 days later after the earthquake, which made it just in time. It only opened hours before my flight was to leave, before I was to fly. And I got down there to Temuco, thinking that I was, going to be fairly safe down there because it was far enough away from the main area of the earthquake damage. Except the first morning there, I woke up. It was like my alarm clock was my bed bouncing across the room. I mean, literally bouncing all the way across the room, walking right over to the door. And I had never in my life experienced something like that. I mean, even the aftershock was I think it was 7.6, somewhere around there anyways, the aftershock, and quite a ways from the epicenter. So anyways, they had the conference down there, and I was hearing all these reports of all the damage up in the area that I was going to from Temuco. And I wanted to do something. I so wanted to be able to do something. I was hearing all these reports of how, people there, everything was destroyed. Down in one area, they were in tent cities, and they were eating off of filthy, fly-covered pieces of cardboard because they didn't have any kitchenware that was left that didn't get destroyed. So I bought up a bunch of sets of dishes and cutlery and all this kind of stuff, and a fellow in the church in Temuco had it sent up to a contact up in that area. And I tell you, when I got up there, I was so thankful that I did. I don't normally charge things on a credit card, but I'd had to at that point. It was so desperate, the need. And so after the meetings down in Temuco, we saw the odd little bit of damage from the earthquake, but I got up into the other area, into an area, Concepcion, and buildings completely crumbled and toppled down all over the place. Roads that had caved in, bridges that had collapsed. I couldn't believe it. And then the hotel that I was staying in there, the last morning there in that hotel, all of a sudden, great big lines and cracks coming down the wall in the breakfast room as another aftershock was hitting. It completely destroyed the front part of the hotel. We all got ushered out urgently out of the building out the back way. Elevators were turned off. We had to do the stairs and just get out as quickly as possible. And I couldn't believe some of the things that I saw there. 8.8 magnitude. But there was the earthquake and the seaquake, what they call a maremoto, that caused the tsunami. And one of the days there, we headed out to this area called Tumbes. It was a high-end tourist resort, really. and it got completely wiped away from the tsunami. The tsunami came in and literally boats that were in the water on the shore got thrown a couple of blocks inland. The whole area down on that ground level was completely wiped away, washed away completely. People were living in a tent city right down there. Tents that were, big military type tents that would hold, technically would hold, 10, 20 people. But these had 30 people crammed in like sardines, not just one tent per family, but several families in one tent. And watching the people just so desperately looking for a ray of hope. And a pastor from that area that was with me, he had a guitar that we borrowed a guitar from somewhere down there. I didn't have mine with me. And I was not very much in practice, to be honest. And there was a song that I really loved, and I felt it was just perfect for that particular occasion. And as I pulled out the guitar, I was strumming a little bit, and some people in this tent city in a little open area started gathering around, and there was quite a few people that had gathered around. And I thought of this song, but I'd never heard it in Spanish. I only knew it was in English. And I started to sing. It was called Peace in the Midst of a Storm. And I was just doing a rough translation as I was going through, trying to sing it, to give it to them in Spanish and, give them the words as I would sing part of it in English and give them what it technically meant in Spanish. And then all of a sudden, they were singing along. I couldn't believe it because they were all singing along this song perfectly that I didn't even know existed in Spanish. And it was the first instance, actually, that gave me an idea that there was something with that song in the Spanish language. But at that time, there was hundreds of people that had gathered by that point, but many of them came forward wanting to be prayed for, wanting to pray and receive that Lord that would give that peace in the midst of this storm that they were living in. So not only were lives touched and changed, but lives were changed for the eternity. But in that tent city, there was a young woman that was pregnant, and she went into labor early. There was no way to get her out of the tent and into medical aid. There wasn't anything in the area that they could get to. And being that I had had some emergency midwifery training, I was able to go in and help deliver this baby right in the midst of this storm that was going on, right in the midst of this tent city that had been completely destroyed, the whole town around it. But watching these people, and then from there, we headed up the hill a little ways to another tent city. And up there, it was all guarded by military, because it was quite a dangerous area. And any of you that saw the thumbnail for this, that saw the picture for this, you saw me with two military men. They were my guards at that point, going through. I mean, there was robbery going on like crazy. There was hundreds and hundreds of people in this little village that they'd set up. There was one shower for all these multitudes of people. And people had set up little like grills with charcoal underneath them to cook food, boil water. And, somebody might have had a big bag of rice. And the next thing you know, somebody else is there trying to steal it at gunpoint or at knife point, trying to steal it because there was so much desperation in that point. Desperation like I had really never seen in my life. It was absolutely crazy. We'd be driving along, and the next thing you know, you'd feel an aftershock and you'd see another building crumbling, or you'd see another piece of road falling right down. You'd see a road that was going along straight, then all of a sudden it just collapsed about, like a floor of a building, just whoom, right down. There was one area that it was completely separate, just joined by a bridge from the main part of the town and the city, and had no way in or out other than this one bridge. Well, that bridge collapsed. And the only way they had to get anything in or out of the village was through these little private little rowboats and little motor putt-putts, etc., to get over there. And all they had in that area to eat, they had stale often moldy Danish pastries. That was their food collection for the time being in that area. It was absolutely phenomenal what God was doing in touching people's lives. Just seeing those lives in that area in Tumbes that were touched and changed because of a need, because of desperation, because of a desire to see that peace that they so needed in the midst of the storm that they were living in. We went to several of the really damaged areas all along the coast and did meetings in the evenings when we couldn't go along the coast roads, but we did meetings at different churches. We were at an orphanage and we were in another building. The church building had literally fallen down. The walls were completely crumbled, and they were sitting there on benches having their meeting because they wanted more. They were so hungry for something that would give them that peace. But this past week was the 11th anniversary. And I know apparently it was reported that it was very, very quick, comparatively, restoration in the cities and in the towns and in the roadways, etc. But there's still some areas that are being now worked on. I know the area that I was mentioning, Tumbes, it was said that at that time they didn't know whether they would ever allow the waterfront area of that town to rebuild. They figured it was too dangerous, too risky, and they were setting some rules at that point of having to have any house or any structure that was built a certain level above the sea area. But driving through that town of Tumbes, it was pretty incredible watching. We were right along the waterfront. Waves come in, waves go out, taking some of the sand with it in and out. And at one point, we're driving along, and I was literally in shock. I couldn't even say anything, but in shock as I watched, as this wave came in, rolled back the sand, and there was a hand sticking out of the sand. I was such in shock, I couldn't even say anything. I was in so much shock at the time. As I said, I'd never seen anything like that, but I'm so thankful that God gave me the opportunity to be there. As scary as it was at times, feeling these aftershocks that were like high sevens, low eights, aftershocks. And I'd never been in an earthquake even at the 6 before, let alone something like this. But I am very thankful that God gave me that opportunity just to be there, to be His hand extended to those people so desperately needing a little bit of love, a little bit of peace, a little bit of comfort at that time. So, although it was a very, very difficult time, a very painful time for many people lost family members, lost good friends, lost children that were wiped out with the tsunami, killed in buildings in the earthquake. There was one building, an apartment building, you could see the whole building just burst into two pieces, collapsed. And the windows were all gone, and you could see people's clothing and personal articles hanging out the side of the building as it was destroyed. Many people were buried in these buildings. Some it took days before they were ever out, but hundreds of people died in that earthquake. So it became a very painful time for many. But in spite of all of that, lives were touched, people were healed, hearts were restored. There was one story in the town of Tumbes that I will never forget. I didn't see it happen, of course. I wasn't there when the tsunami hit. But the people were warned, the tsunami is almost here. Get out, get to higher ground. And there was an older couple, and the woman was in a wheelchair. And she was trying to convince her husband to go and save himself. And he refused to go and leave her there to die alone, to be wiped away by the tsunami. And as it was, they were both swept away and killed in that tsunami. But they preferred to go together. I guess what better way to go than with the one you've loved all those years? And it was amazing watching in all these different little towns that we went to, all the way from Tumbes and from starting out in Temuco and then all the way up to Constitucion and all that whole area that had just been devastated. But God did an amazing work, touching lives, changing hearts, setting captives free. A little baby born in the middle of the tent city. It was amazing what God did, and I am so thankful for the opportunity that He gave me to be there. I've asked Jerry if he would sing that song that we were talking about, Peace in the Midst of a Storm. And it really is something that is incredible. God's peace can give you peace that no man, no circumstance, no situation can give you other than God and God alone. Jerry, Peace in the Midst of a Storm.
When you're crying for all the times you've tried, and you're trying to forget the tears you've cried, 'cause you've seen so much pain and sorrow, you don't know about tomorrow, but you can have peace in the midst of a storm. Sometimes I feel like I know you feel, and my heart's reaching out for something that I know is real. Well, then His love comes to me, and it helps my mind to be in peace in the midst of a storm. You can have peace in the midst of a storm. You can find hope when you just can't go on anymore. Yes, there's love to be found. Oh, when your whole world's tumbling down, you can find peace in the midst of the storm. When you're crying for all the times you've cried, and you're trying to forget the tears you cried, 'cause you've seen so much pain and sorrow, you don't know about tomorrow. You can have peace in the midst of a storm. You can find peace in the midst of a storm. You can have hope when you just can't go on anymore. 'Cause there's love to be found when your whole world's tumbling down. You can find peace in the midst of a storm. You can find peace in the midst of a storm. You can have hope when you just can't go on anymore. Yes, there's love to be found when your whole world's tumbling down. You can find peace in the midst of the storm. Peace in the midst of a storm.
Yes, you can have peace in the midst of the storm. I know some of you are going through stormy times right now in your lives with the COVID going on around and loved ones that have been affected by it and some that are still struggling with it. But you can have peace in the midst of that storm. It's amazing, the peace that only God can give. As I said, that time down in Chile truly did touch my life, change my life, touched my heart in a way that is undescribable. There's so many things that I saw and happened while I was down there. Far too many to get into all of them, but it's incredible what God did in lives touched and changed. People that came to know Him as they were in desperation for something more than the circumstances they were living in. So I am so thankful that I've been able to share some of these stories with you today. It was something that was truly impacted my life and my heart. And I know that my life will never be the same from having lived that experience. And I'm very thankful to the pastors that helped me and got me around when I was down there. A couple of pastors from a woman named Peace, and her husband that took me around. He gave up his time to drive me around to see all of these things because he knew the need and he knew the prayer that needed to go into it. So I want to pray with you before we close. And if any of you have been touched by this message and would like to help support the work that Jerry and I are doing, please feel free. Jerry will put up a couple of links at the end so you have a way that you can give a donation if you'd like. But no push. If you'd like to, we'd love to have your support. And if not, we understand. It's a difficult time for everybody. But Lord, I ask you right now to touch hearts that are hurting, to comfort those that need that comfort, to give them that peace that only you can give, Lord. Peace in the midst of the storm. And Lord, I thank you that that song got put into many languages for people to be able to receive that peace that only you can give. Lord, I thank you so much that you gave us this opportunity to share you and your peace in this difficult time, Father, in Jesus' precious name. Amen. God bless you. It was good to be with you, and we hope to see you again next week. It's been wonderful to be able to share these messages, these testimonies with you, and I hope they're blessing you. God bless you. Bye-bye.